So good morning or afternoon, everyone. Please remember to mute yourself whenever you are not speaking. As usual, all the slides and links referenced in this webinar will be sent out along with the recordings and the PowerPoint presentations in the next PD2Go newsletter. Checking for understanding helps students and instructors understand what needs to be planned next to achieve learning goals. During this session, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to discuss the importance of checking for understanding and the need to create checkpoints in our classes to monitor learning. So for today's session, I will be facilitating this session with Dr. Broding. And by the end of this session, you will be able to discuss the importance of checking for understanding, reflect on the reasons why instructors actually need to incorporate checkpoints in their lessons, and analyze, of course, the benefits and types of checking for understanding strategies. But first of all, what is checking for understanding? It might seem like a silly question, but I want to hear from you. When you hear, okay, you need to check for understanding, what is it that comes to your mind? And for that reason, I just added to the chat box a link to a poll on Poll Everywhere. You can join by web using pollev.com, Evelyn Suij-Ojeda 110, or simply copy and paste the link that I added on the chat box. You can also join by text if you will. So basically, the question is quite simple. What is checking for understanding? So I am getting answers already. This is exciting. So let's see what you want to say. Confirming the information review is received as expected and understood. Absolutely agree.
There's nothing in the chat box.
There are two links, but I can totally add it again, no problem. There you are. Okay, so you can copy and paste, because I don't know why. Sometimes I actually get links on Zoom. Today I don't. So just copy and paste that link that you have on the chat box. Okay, so let me continue reading the answers. Actively working to ensure that students understand what they have reviewed and been discussed. Absolutely. Great. Ability to apply concept discussed in course. Checking for understanding is the process of incorporating checkpoints to see what the students have understood from what is being taught. Agree. It's a way to help others understand the content of what is being taught or communicated. I absolutely agree with all of you. When we talk about, let me just... So I think we're all on the same page concerning how we see checking for understanding. Absolutely agree with you. When we talk about checking for understanding, we have to remember that checking for understanding helps students and instructors, as I said before, understand what needs to be planned next to achieve learning goals. So it's not only to, checking if students are understand or they follow, but also getting that data to be able to see what's your next step in your lesson plan. So checking for understanding is simply the instructor verifying that students are learning. What has been taught, while it's been taught, and not after. So we need to have this continuous verification when learning is happening, just not be after the whole activity has been carried out. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me, because I don't see your cameras, but I can hear you. So feel free to jump in and make any comments if you want. So we're talking about checking for understanding, and we need to understand that it's a key element of any learning journey. But you need to make sure that you use different methods in order to determine that your students have actually learned, they have taken what they have taken away from your OCS or your BCS, and how that will highly benefit both students and instructors. Well, let's see what research says. Well, according to research, use informative assessment designed to check for understanding and provide students with feedback and support is one of the best effective ways to improve learning. And not only to improve learning, but also enhance student learning or academic success. Just because of the need to cover a large amount of information, and we know that we need to cover so much content and develop so many skills in only one session that sometimes we may not take enough time to check to make sure the students understand a concept or can effectively apply a skill. So, or if they actually didn't fully understand, often the time isn't taken by instructors to figure out ways to improve their learning. So one of our jobs as instructors is to avoid waiting for students to struggle with assignments and to prevent that from happening and understand where the learning gaps are so as to help students overcome those challenges. Checking for understanding, in other words, is keeping on having these checkpoints to see exactly where your students need help. Create these checkpoints not only, well, of course, to help students, but also to collect this data to identify learning gaps that we need to address quickly, not after the class is finished. And what we want is actually also for students to feel more heard and attended, so they feel like if they struggle, they have you listen and they have you helping them. And also to help students to retain more from each session so as to increase their learning confidence. And as I said before, if you have these checkpoints to identify learning gaps, you will be able to concentrate your efforts and your time. You only have 2 hours, you only have 3 hours. You need to concentrate your efforts and time on those learning gaps that you need to address. And also, when we talk about checking for understanding, it actually is a great tool to see whether your teaching strategies are actually working. Sometimes it's not the content, sometimes it's the way that we are providing the content. So, Dr. Broding, the floor is yours. Any questions? You may use a chat box if you have any questions or you want to add any comments.
All right, so benefits and types of checking for understanding. So there's plenty of research confirming the effectiveness and endless benefits of checking for understanding, no matter the course or level taught. According to Rosenshine, effective instruction asks questions and checks responses of all students in order to help them practice new information and connect. And I can't see the bottom of that, Dr. Suij-Ojeda, at the bottom of the slide. I don't know why. All right, well, let's just go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so what are the benefits of CFU? So checking if students understand and are actually achieving the learning goals set up for the class allows the instructor to make instructional decisions during the lesson, so in real time, and it informs the instructor when to speed up, slow down, or reteach, and thus CFU helps pace the lesson. Let's be honest. When instructors look at independent work, homework quizzes, or state test results to see if students have learned, it's too late to modify instruction. Is it too late to take action in order to improve the quality of learning? And that is why CFU is so important and necessary. So let's review what CFU is again. It is the backbone of effective instruction and explicit direct instruction because you measure and monitor student learning in real time. So you're getting that data in real time and being able to use it to drive instructional decisions in the moment. Helps to achieve high student academic success because you revise and closely connect teaching in direct response to student learning. Also ensures that your students will not be practicing and reinforcing their mistakes, leading to fossilization, and that is difficult to tackle. So what does checking for understanding look like? So think of checking for understanding. What does it look like as another step in your lesson plan? It's an extra step in your teaching process, but it's not something to be seen as a burden. something to be seen as a benefit and a skill to hone on your own so that you are just used to doing it and it just becomes second nature. So again, it involves checking to see if students are retaining the information while you are still teaching it, not after. It often takes the form of a short formative assessment, but it doesn't need to be pencil and paper check.
Okay, any comments so far? Any questions? Okay, so why should we check for understanding? Checking for understanding is important because it helps educators make the most of instructional time, so you actually concentrate your efforts and time on tackling those learning gaps that you found. It's a daily basis activity, no one reserved only for observation days, but also reserved for every time that we teach. If we want students to retain the subject matter, we need to incorporate these checkpoints into every lesson. I know that it sounds like, oh, do I really need to do that as well? It's tedious, but it's actually, it doesn't need to be. It can be really, really fun. The truth is, like, most of us, we actually try to check for understanding, even if we don't realize it, just by asking students to show hands if they understand, or by asking, is everyone following? Am I making myself clear? But unfortunately, sometimes these efforts fall short. So to work on this, to make this a better process, let's take a look at what checking for understanding can be implemented in the classroom. And actually, I'm just going to show you what types of strategies we can use in the class. And then during the why session, the how-to session, we will give you hands-on activities that you can take with you, along with templates that you can use in your class. So there are many types of checking for understanding instruction. Fortunately, there is an array of checking for understanding instructions that you can select from, depending on your learner's need, the learning goals that you have for your sessions. And but during this session, this webinar, we will only concentrate in 3. So the first one is verbal strategies. Basically, students orally, they share their responses with their classmates or with the whole class. But we also have written strategies. Here, students can reflect on a question, statement, or a problem that you pose and write their responses, position or solution, depending on what you give them. It can be either shared or not with classmates, but it's always shared with the instructor. Now we have demonstration strategies. These type of strategies, when implementing these type of strategies, students complete tasks, they provide and explain examples, they create deliverables, or any other type of learning artifact to demonstrate that they understood, to demonstrate their knowledge and content mastery. Now you may wonder, okay, so I have written strategies, oral strategies, demonstration strategies. I need to create checkpoints. And so which strategy to use? Well, the good news is that you need to actually have an eclectic approach to checking for understanding, because effective instructors actually use a combination of all 3 strategies. When instructors create and apply a specific checking for understanding strategy, the students' level of understanding can be measured by their response, of course. So depending on the type of strategy that you use, the student response elicited may be either closed or open. So closed responses normally have brief answers or only one correct answer, but you can also have open responses. And those are questions or tasks that require learners to make use of higher order thinking skills, such as assessing, analyzing, and evaluating. And we will give you specific examples during the how-to session next week. Dr. Broding?
So right now we're going to do a whole group discussion. So please feel free to answer this question. What CFU strategies have you used, either verbally or in the chat? And
sorry, we have a
also-
Jamboard for that. So
sorry.
I'm going to share, yes, the Jamboard, which you can actually use also for checking for understanding. And I'm going to share the link here on the chat. So please use the sticky notes to add your answer. What are the benefits of checking for understanding? Okay, Dr. Broding, maybe you can start reading the answers. Okay,
Absolutely. So over here in the right-hand corner, we have keep students engaged, allows students to practice what the professor is teaching, to double check the outcomes of the course, helps with student progress, helps to effectively determine if the students have understood and before the lesson has ended where corrective action can be made, making sure students have applicable knowledge or skill, deeper learning, understanding of what's being taught, leads to effective lesson planning in the immediate and for the future, helps students to understand what is being taught, better in-class discussion, curriculum comprehension, and connects the dots with the learning objectives. Oh, one more, Professor Constance. One way is that it is an informal assessment that is formative. It allows you to know what the students understand and can do. This provides you the ability to adjust the lesson and reteach or extend learning. These are some great ones. Thank you.
I will share that Jamboard with everyone as well. I will download it and share everything with you. Okay, so are there any questions so far? Any comments?
I think I'm going to use the Jamboard in one of my classes. This is awesome.
It's awesome, right? You can use it as an exit ticket. What I like about it is very easy to set up, and it has so many uses in the classroom. So anyone else wants to share orally what checking for understanding strategies have you used? One of the things that I like about this, checking for understanding strategies, is that they don't need to be that elaborated. A really well-formulated question should be enough to see if your students understand. A really nice setup or design group discussion can help you, if you monitor well, can help you really tackle the issues that you might foresee and then immediately help with those learning gaps that you see. Let me see, I have another comment. Okay, Dr. Halil, oh, sorry, Halil Behovek. I'm sorry if I mispronounced. Okay, Professor Sani, better. You like gamifying the class and organize small competition. That's absolutely great. Can you elaborate on that? What have you used? What have you incorporated in your class so as to check for understanding?
Yeah, I generally like to use these freebie platforms such as quizzes.com. I have a bunch of kind of custom-made quizzes there, and I also there's also a database of already pre-built quizzes that you can use if you don't have time. So basically, I organize a competition between them. and the competition is for the participation. So, but after the fact, we actually go over each question, and I give a chance to students to basically earn more participation points by explaining deeper the answer to the questions they gave.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the things that we believe, and I'm with you on that one, when we come to these trainings of, so I need to also create checkpoints, or it feels like a burden. It feels like, well, too much. But actually, you can create, and the Light Center will help you with that. We're working on it. Create templates that you can use over and over and over again with general questions that actually will help you see whether your students are learning, if learning is actually happening. So it doesn't need to be that time consuming. That's my point. The quizzes. Oh yeah, I've used that one. Thank you so much. My exercises, Dr. Ogulet says, my exercises start with the use of the flipped classroom. Absolutely agree. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Professor Ogulet?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Sure, you can.
Yeah, before the classes, I'll send out a series of exercises for the students to do before the class. Like, for example, in my 500 organizational 500 class, I had we were talking about personality. So I had a couple of assessments for them to do on personality. And when we started the class, they would we would go through these exercises, and they would break out into small groups, or depending on the size of the class, a think, pair, share type of exercise to discuss the results of their assessments together, and you know, tie it back to the class materials and what we read in the chapters. And then we would reconvene and bring everybody together, and it would give me a really good opportunity to start filling in the blanks of what they might have missed. So that's what I mean.
Thank you so much for sharing. And what came to my mind is what I do. So really a personal strategies for checking for understanding is that when I'm teaching a class, normally I teach the practicum, which is a very complex course, and it has lots of work. So students sometimes are overwhelmed. So I really need to be there to help them. I really need to be there to fill in those gaps before it gets too overwhelming. And what I do is that I try my best to have VCS after Wednesdays. So they post their discussion questions on Wednesday. And then when I read the discussion question, I can actually see where is it that I need to concentrate my efforts and times during VCS. So I use discussion questions as data to allow me plan what's next in my class. I think it's very, and I think it happens to all of us, when we read discussion questions, you feel like, this concept, I think I need to reteach it, or I need to go back. And so those discussion questions can also give you data for checking for learning. Professor Constant, did you see the question on the chat box? So you said that it's important to use non-linguistic, linguistics, both quick and structured. It uses both sides of the brain and leads to increased critical thinking. Can you provide examples of that, Professor Constant?
Sure, I apologize. I do see Dr. Broding's response. So in my class, I think it's really important as we discuss with students these ideals that we want them to know and be able to do, apply, and evaluate, so that when they leave the class, they've mastered those course objectives, but that they can use them in their future. And so we focus a lot on what they write. There's a lot of writing. And I think it's important for us to remember that non-linguistics or visuals, which can be like if you're in finance, you see numbers a lot in graphs and charts, and you're constantly, you're looking at data in terms of, plots and points, and, that's very important. And then you've got pictures that, can lend themselves to ways that give students the opportunity to, in a different way, show what they know. And then even things as simple as exclamation points, or you could do a quick check for understanding, check the pulse of your class by having them put a thumbs up in the chat.
Exactly.
right? Like those are really important. And then there's more structured activities where you can say, I want you to create an infographic where those visuals convey strongly what it is that you know and do. Or I want you to make sure that you've got a graphic organizer, and it could be something like a Venn diagram, and which then combines both the non-linguistic and the linguistic, because they're writing and putting it in a visual organizer. And then we also know that even another quick way for checking for understanding is, you know, having them being able to summarize it in their own words or teach it to their pair, or they could write it in a chat, just so that you know that you're checking in with them, and that the brain is a pattern seeker. So the brain wants to be able to have those quick pauses so that it can digest it. So they need to see it, hear it, and do something with it. And checking for understanding is a way that they do something with the information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You're actually giving away a bit of what we're going to be doing next week on the how-to session. We're going to give you hands-on activities that you can use in your class, make your students think critically, but also find ways that are easy to implement, so it's time saving, but it will help you also collect data so as to for you to plan your lessons in the best possible way, most effective way. I'm gonna read the chat, the chat, and then we will continue. I post a short video in Gab and asking the students to watch and answer the questions or during the session or for the next week. Their answers should be posted on the Google Doc that I shared with them. Okay, that's a good strategy. I'd like to know what presentation are Observer used for. Oh, we are using Canva. Okay, we are using Canva for this presentation. So as Professor Constant suggested, you don't really need to super elaborate on strategies to check for understanding. Only asking students by showing hands and raise their hand if they understand is a quick way to check for understanding. Or if a student asks for a question, then do not answer the question. Maybe you can ask someone else to answer the question to see if someone else understands and learning is actually happening. But all those tips and tricks will be shared with you next week on the how-to session. In the meantime, well, let me read the. We are using Canva. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let's have these exit tickets. Exit tickets are wonderful ways to check for understanding. So think about these 3 questions, and I'm going to pull up launch a Zoom poll in a sec. But think about these 3 questions. What was the most important thing you learned today? Think about everything we have discussed. Has today's lesson improved your knowledge concerning checking for understanding? How do you think this will help you as an instructor, as a higher education professor? So I'm going to launch the poll right here. So you can actually add your questions, your answers to the poll. Can you see the poll?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So please take a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, of whatever you need to complete this exit ticket. We will read the answers and then the class will be dismissed. Okay, I'm going to end the poll in 10 seconds, and then we will read the answers. Okay, let's see. What was the most important thing you learned today? Let's see. Here. Oh, sorry. Okay. Checking for understanding has long-term benefits. Agree. Confirming. Understanding helps set the knowledge. Additional options for checking for understanding. The importance of active learning. Tools that can immediately incorporate understanding throughout the class. The importance of implementing. Wonderful. New techniques that we will learn a lot more next week. It will be a more hands-on activity session. So has today's webinar improved your knowledge concerning ways to checking for understanding? Yes, it was a good review. That's good to know. Absolutely. I've learned about a couple of apps programs that will be used in the classroom. Yeah, I love collaborating with you. Wonderful. So how do you think this webinar will help you as an educator? Improving class preparation, that's key. One of the keys to checking for understanding is collecting data to help you plan your next lesson. To bring fun and joy in my class, agree. It makes you more aware and allows you to practice some best practices for checking for understanding. Yes. Providing tools to better facilitate the classroom. The ideas will help increase engagement and enhance learning. Absolutely true. So this is actually a very easy way to check for understanding. You can use Zoom pool, create three questions that, as you can see in the exit ticket, they're very general, so you can actually ask the same question in different contexts and topics. And as your students are answering the questions, you let them go. Okay, so that they can answer orally, they can write in the Zoom poll. It all depends on what you want, but then the exit ticket will allow them to leave the class, and it will provide you with ideas and data to see what is it exactly that they learned and how you can improve your next lesson. Any questions so far?
I didn't realize how boring my classes were until I saw how you utilize these tools to help us effectively teach and engage our students. I really appreciate these meetings because
really
it's amazing how you're using these tools. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the idea. The idea is that we all help each other. We at the Light Center, we believe that it's all about instructors helping instructors. If I have something that I know, I want to share it with all of you. And I know the same applies to most faculty members.